Now, before we get into anything for this game, I just want to come over this like, hey, you're the 33, you've already done one game of Fnatic this split, and that was your only Anarchy analysis for the European side of things. Why don't we get different teams in here? Well, this is probably the biggest game this weekend, bar say G2 Rogue, which I was tempted to do. But this game kind of defines the gap between second and third between these two teams, as they're both considered the top of the league in terms of how they can play, but obviously Origin's style is considered to be too slow. It stalls out when they get Barons, and obviously sometimes isn't that effective. That being said, this game is a chance to prove against a Fnatic team that struggled day one against Mad, and as a whole, realistically could end this week 0-2, which is something, as a Fnatic fan, you wouldn't want. So, this game is huge for both teams, as it could cement their place, actually, in the LEC going forward, in terms of where they finish in the standings. So, without further ado, I like to say this, you guys like to hear it. DJ, spin the track and get this on the road. Well, let's kick off the draft with Fnatic on blue side, Origin on red, and the first ban is immediately a Kalista removal by Fnatic. Obviously, one of the predominant S-tier ADCs alongside Varus, whom does get banned out by OG in a few seconds, but this is a very quick ban phase as a whole, and Kalista very strong combined with champs that have hooks like Blitz, like Thresh, and it's sort of in the wheelhouse of Upset as a champion that can be played. Next up is TF ban by OG. Nemesis's TF does not get to come out, considering how well it was used in a losing effort against Mad. It's still very respectable as a champion and a pick for Nemesis, so it gets removed off the board. Again, Fnatic are seemingly banning all the OPs, and Yuumi gets taken off the board next. Obviously, probably one of the most powerful supports in the game right now in terms of her usefulness. She provides the jungler a lot of use in terms of clear rate. For late game, she also allows so much healing to be done with her E. It becomes quite hard to kill anyone on your team, especially with Aunt's Sensor, giving extra movement speed on the item, by the way, for some odd reason, but it's very, very powerful. And alongside her being very powerful, another champion that's got considerably high amount of strength, it's the Varus. Varus, high amount of poke, lethality build Varus just chunks enemies. You thought Zoe's poke when she was first introduced into the game was bad. Varus is a lot worse than that, because his ult has multiple CC if it hits onto something, and obviously if you stand in the chain of corruptions, you're going to get stunned up as well. And yeah, you can then hit an empowered Q, and they're pretty much dead. Especially if you stack up your passive and then E them, they're dead to rights. Very, very powerful champion, and it's removed by OG. Last champion ban for Fnatic is the Aphelios. The last of the kind of top tier ADCs still left. Very situational in terms of how you want to teamfight with this champion. You obviously want to use the chakrams, which is the white gun, and the blue gun, which is the Infernum, because Infernal is very powerful in close range teamfights, and chakrams just build up a lot of attack speed if you use them correctly. It's very, very powerful in teamfights if you have that combo. The blue and white gun, if you don't understand which is chakram and which is Infernum, that's probably the best way to describe it. But it's a very strong champion that needs to be taken off the board. Similarly with Syndra, OG's last ban. Syndra, a flex pick, yes, reckless with mages isn't very that good, I guess is the best way to put it. because he gets memed on quite a bit by other teams, but it's still a champion that can be respected, especially in Nemesis hands, so that champion being removed is a good, strong champ removal. Now, that is a very strong set of bans. Obviously, a lot of the OPs are taken off the board. Champs that have slipped through: Graves, Zoe, Set. I mean, he isn't that powerful anymore, but on this patch, because he received quite a few nerfs. But there is quite a few champions up there that do have a lot of potential to be picked. So, welcome to first pick territory, and Fnatic gets first pick here, which is sort of one thing that you could expect. Now, they obviously focus the jungle pick here, and they go for the Graves, the champion that's quite strong in the current meta. And if you hark back to the day before's performance for Fnatic, they did play this champion in the jungle for self-made, alongside a champion that we may see later, but it's a very strong jungler that can carry in late game, as well as set up so many plays early game. He's kind of a bit of a flexible champion in terms of how he's able to play. Yes, if he does get caught out, your team comp kind of gets screwed because he is essentially your carry, but he's still very strong, and obviously it's one of them champs that will work as a whole because of how strong he is. The response though is going to be the Orianna for OG. This champion obviously sets up a very strong mid lane champ. It's one of NukeDuck's safest options in terms of champions he plays. Plus, Ori is probably one of the safest blind pick mid laners to choose from, because there isn't much a champion can do into an Ori. If she gets kind of jumped on, she can use her command dissonance and then her ultimate to essentially keep him away. And yeah, it's a very safe option for NukeDuck. Now, the other pick that comes alongside this Ori is the bot lane option for OG, and it is actually going to be an Ezreal. Now, this champion is probably one of the other S tier top bot laners currently left available. I mean, you then jump down to probably A, where you've got Kaiser and MF, and then the possibility of something a bit more whack or random coming out in that bot side, like a AP mage or something. But Ezreal, strong poke, very easy to stay alive and sustain in fights because he's just able to move himself away and keep himself alive in a very easy sort of maneuverability with his kit, and is very strong in that sense. Now, the response is the juicy part of this draft. Similarly to the day before's performance for Mad, Reckless gets given Soraka. The reason I know it's going to be the Soraka is because the bot lane support is picked right after the Soraka. It's the Leona and Soraka lane down bot. This is a very strong lane, because people don't expect the amount of harassment these two can do, considering it is a Soraka. You just start Q, and then you can just hit the enemies. You then also go W. You can essentially keep your support alive even longer, and it's very hard to obviously execute this bot lane. Now, with a Leona, it does make this bot lane even more aggro than what it was, yes, the day before, because I do believe they chose something a little less aggro. I forget what it was. I think it might have been Lulu, maybe a mage along those lines. But it's a very... it was maybe a Senna, actually. But the Soraka can and do a lot, and when you get to late game, yes, it does fall off in terms of what it can do. Like, it doesn't become the main damage threat. You're kind of putting that emphasis onto your mid lane or into your jungle. But Leona does allow the engage, while Soraka allows the sustain. So essentially you're probably playing with 2 supports and then the possibility of a third in the top lane, or even in the mid lane, who knows. But it's a good solid setup for Fnatic that does end up giving over though a Thresh to OG, which is the sort of engage tool alongside the Orianna that was needed for OG. Like, yes, you can go into the jungle with a champion that has a lot of engage, say like a Zac or even a Trundle, but the Thresh is a good pickup because it allows some flexibility in the bot lane. It allows some escape tools with the Lantern. It also allows the hook to get you in. It's very strong as a champion right now, Thresh is, and it's probably one of the most potent supports in the game, bar say the Yuumi, or even a Set, I would say is up there in terms of supports. The second bad phase is kicked off with the Azir ban by Origin. Obviously Azir is a very good champion in Ori, in terms of the fact that she can be essentially poked out by a load of sand soldiers, and is essentially the equivalent of the Ori ball, but times possibility of 3. And it is very strong in terms of the kit. Azir obviously is also a big engage tool, which would allow the Leona some sort of access to the team, as well as the Graves as well on the side of Fnatic, but removing it is a good choice for OG. It also does put a less of an option for a top tier mid laner on the Fnatic side, so they're probably going to have to choose something a bit more different as a possibility. But we do see the Trundle and Volley ban from Fnatic in response. Trundle, again, is a champion that can do a lot in terms of shutting down tanks, so it makes it less likely to see a carry in the top side. But obviously with the Trundle ban, tanks are more predominantly going to be picked because Trundle is a tank killer. Reason being, he makes them a health pack. With that Subjugate ultimate, it just means that you're not going to be healing as a top laner. You're just going to be giving over so much health over to a Trundle who realistically won't need it, because he's obviously going to build quite a lot of damage in his kit and kill you before you get any use. He does have probably one of the best clear rates to go alongside the Graves, so it's going to be quite a close jungle race, so that will be interesting early game. But obviously Volley is another champion removed. It's been played quite a bit in the LCS in the top side of the map to reasonable success, I guess would be the best way to put it. He's very strong with that E start. Obviously you get a massive amount of armor. You then obviously have a Q stun and then a W big burst damage. And obviously the more attacks you do, the bigger the attack speed, the more your lightning claws strike. He's very strong in the current meta and is a great asset to have in your team. Now, the last ban of this phase, it appears to be a GP, I believe. And GP, if it is a very strong champion with his barrel kit and his lemons. He can just cleanse out of fights with ease. He obviously has a global ultimate, so removing the champion is very big. He can do so much that you really don't want to see. And finally, let's end this draft out. Starting with the set pickup here for OG. Obviously can be flexed between the two lanes, i.e. the jungle and the top lane. Very strong in terms of his early level combat, very dominant in a top lane position or in the jungle. He does have a quick clear. He's very potent in close range team fights and can do so much damage. As a whole, it's a very strong champion that could realistically win you a fight or turn a fight in your favour. Now, the last 2 picks here for Fnatic. Sees Echo going into the mid lane. Again, strong AP mid. Does have a lot of disengage in its kit, and very useful. It is kind of a hard champion to play though into an Ori early game, because you're having to use your Q to farm. Yes, the phase rush will help a little bit with dealing with Ori, and when you get your Q and E combo going, it makes it a little more interesting of a mid lane battle. But the last pick is a Wukong for Bwipo. Not that predominant focus on the champion from either team, but it did make it through the ban phase, and it's one of those champions people don't realistically respect too much in the current meta, but he's being picked a lot more because of the rework, the change to his ultimate, the change to his clone. It makes him a lot more deadly, and the ultimate is very useful in terms of locking up a lot of targets in a quick succession. It's very hard to deal with if you're coming into him, and it should be quite interesting to see how Bwipo uses it, especially when he's using it into a Malphite. Now Malphite's build has changed over time. Instead of it just being purely AP, it's now become more of this tank sort of build. You build a lot of armor on the champion, and he's going to have a bigger shield. He's very strong in that sense. He's a very, very powerful champion in teamfights as well, with the amount of CC he has. And a good thing to note is that CC can combine very nicely with Set. If Set's able to just showstopper into the entire enemy team and pull him in with his Facebreaker, yeah, that's a very easy big ultimate for Malphite to hit. They're essentially going to die quite quickly, and essentially will just be put to the dust, no matter how much healing a Soraka can do. Now, that is the draft over and done with. This was quite a long one, to say the least, but it had to be discussed because it is a big matchup. Nonetheless, let's get into the game where we're going to be breaking down something. So for this video, we're going to be breaking down this team fight, and the reason I've chose this team fight is it kind of showcases the strength in Fnatic being able to capitalize on a team's mistake. Now, at this point in the game, OG have pretty much won it. They've got a bit of Baron buff left, and realistically, they should be winning the game off this play if they do managed to secure this Drake from Fnatic, not allowing them the Ocean Soul. Now, OG immediately get to the pit first, and at this point, 3 of them go over into the pit to start it up, and they do know that Fnatic have vision of it, yet they don't clear it out. At this point, there's a split call. They don't clear out the vision, and they instead decide to all rotate round to try and collapse onto Fnatic. Now, a blue ward reveals only 4 members of Fnatic near the pit, which allows OG kind of this call to go in towards Fnatic and try and isolate them. The conga line of OG spots an Echo and decides to try and chase him down. Malf and Ezreal try to kill him, but Echo gets Ezreal's flash in this play for his ultimate, which is a worthwhile trade. At this point, OG overcommit their ultimates as both Malf and Oriole get used on just the ultless Echo, and in response, Hylissang basically locks up and punishes the flashless Ezreal. And at this point, with no basically tools or damage tools on OG side, it's very easy for Fnatic to clean them up with the Wukong, who turned up very late to this team fight, and win this fight overall. Now, coming into this one, Fnatic had just suffered their first loss against Fnatic with a very similar team comp with that Soraka in the bot lane. And realistically, Fnatic kind of had something to prove with Reckless playing Soraka and not a ADC that's traditional, more his playstyle, but it worked to an extent. Yes, they secured the Drakes well, and that last teamfight was down to misexecution by OG, but for the entirety of the game, or if not most of the game, OG were in control, and Fnatic were having to play on the back foot, which is not a style we're expecting to see again with Fnatic, as they should be dominating OG, a team that didn't do too well against Fnatic in the spring playoffs, and as such, you wouldn't expect this win for OG. But Fnatic, I feel, just misdrafted this game. The Soraka isn't a champion that works for Reckless, I don't think. And that team comp they drafted, realistically, you look at it, you've got Wukong who does damage. You've got a Graves who's your late game carry. And a Echo who's there as your other carry. But you look at the team, you've got Soraka, Leona, and then a Wukong all setting up plays for these two champions. And even then, Echo just gets killed quite quickly. Once he's bursted out of his ult, he's useless. Wukong's just there to rule, and that's it. But the team comp lacked a big damage threat that you would have thought Reckless would play. And you look at OG's side, they have Ori, Ez, Set and Mouth. That is a wombo combo in the making with Ori, Set and Mouth. Showstopper into Facebreaker into Unstop All Force into Sonic Wave. It's essentially just a Death Pit Origin team that looks far better on paper than what Fnatic's team comp did. So, in my opinion, Fnatic lost this game in the draft phase. Nothing else, nothing less. They were outdrafted by OG heavily in this game, and you could see it in how Fnatic played this. Anyway, that's going to be it for this video. If you enjoyed it, leave a like down below, subscribe if you're new if you want to, and I will see you guys later. Peace out.